Commander Jake Morrison felt his ship shake as the engines suddenly died. He gripped the command chair and looked at the navigation display with confusion. The UNS Horizon had been traveling at full speed toward the edge of their solar system when everything just stopped working. His chief engineer Carl was already shouting reports from the engine room about complete power failure in the warp core. "Sir, all our systems are reading normal, but we cannot move forward," reported Lieutenant Sue from the helm. She pressed buttons frantically, but nothing happened. The ship hung in space like it had hit an invisible wall. Jake had commanded exploration missions for 10 years, but had never seen anything like this. Earth scientists had developed faster than light travel only 5 years ago, and humanity was eager to explore beyond their home system. This was supposed to be their first real journey to another star. 3,000 light-years away on the crystal world of Zentara Prime, High Arbitrator Vexthul studied the holographic display showing the human vessel. His forearms moved across the control surface as he reviewed the file on this new species. The data troubled him greatly. Humans had gone from basic spaceflight to warp drive in just 2 centuries. Most species in the galaxy took at least 5,000 years to achieve such technology. The speed of human advancement broke every pattern the Galactic Council had observed in 12,000 years of monitoring civilizations. Vexthul's assistant, Kreenal, approached with additional reports. "High Arbitrator, the barrier is holding perfectly. The human ship cannot penetrate the quarantine field. However, their energy readings show they are attempting to analyze the blockage." "Of course they are," Vexthul replied with what humans might recognize as a sigh. "These creatures do not accept limitations. Look at their history. When they encounter obstacles, they find ways around them. When they face impossible odds, they create new solutions." Back on Earth, Dr. Lisa Rodriguez was working late in her laboratory at the International Space Research Center. Her computer screen showed gravitational wave patterns that made no sense according to known physics. The readings came from the exact location where the Horizon had stopped. Lisa had spent her entire career studying space-time mechanics and theoretical physics. She understood how gravity worked and how massive objects bent space around them, but the data from the solar system's edge showed gravitational fields that could not exist naturally. "Computer, run analysis on gravitational anomaly sector 7, she commanded. The artificial intelligence processed the information for several minutes before responding. "Dr. Rodriguez, the gravitational patterns indicate an artificial barrier, constructed from materials not found in our periodic table. The energy signature suggests technology approximately 1,000 years more advanced than current human capabilities." Lisa stared at the screen. Someone had built a cage around their solar system. Someone was keeping humanity trapped like animals in a zoo. She immediately called Admiral Chris Hayes at the United Nations Space Command. Hayes was known for his direct approach to problems and his willingness to take risks when Earth's security was threatened. "Admiral, I need to speak with you about the Horizon situation," Lisa said when Hayes answered the secure communication line. "Doctor, I was hoping you would call. My people are telling me our ship hit some kind of barrier. They say it is impossible, but the evidence is right there." "Sir, it is not impossible. It is artificial. Someone built this barrier to keep us inside our solar system. We are being quarantined." Admiral Hayes was quiet for a long moment. Lisa could hear him typing on his keyboard as he reviewed the data she was sending. "Doctor, if what you are saying is true, then we are not alone, and whoever built this barrier has technology far beyond ours." "Yes, sir, but the barrier has weaknesses. My analysis shows that it requires constant energy input to maintain its structure. If we could find the right frequency, we might be able to disrupt it." 3 weeks later, Captain Amy Foster sat in the pilot seat of the UNS Pioneer, a small research vessel designed for high-speed reconnaissance missions. Her orders were simple but dangerous. Fly directly into the barrier at maximum speed and record everything possible before the ship was destroyed. Amy had volunteered for the mission despite knowing she would not survive. Her husband Dan had died in a mining accident on Mars 2 years ago, and she had no children. If her sacrifice could help humanity break free from their invisible prison, she was willing to make it. "All systems green, Captain," reported her co-pilot Mike. "Engines at full power. Barrier contact in 30 seconds. Amy activated the emergency transmission beacon that would send all their data back to Earth. She thought about her childhood on a farm in Nebraska, watching the stars and dreaming of exploring space. Now she would be the first human to touch whatever was keeping them trapped. 15 seconds to contact, Mike announced. Energy readings are off the charts. Whatever this thing is made of, it is not from this universe. The Pioneer struck the barrier at nearly half the speed of light. For a brief moment, Amy saw colors that had no names and felt forces that human science could not explain. The ship's hull began to dissolve as energies beyond imagination tore through every atom. But in those final seconds, the Pioneer's sensors recorded everything. The barrier's composition, its energy patterns, its structural weaknesses, and most importantly, proof that it was definitely artificial. The explosion when the Pioneer disintegrated lit up space for millions of kilometers. Energy waves spread across 3 star systems as the barrier absorbed and redirected the ship's destruction. Every advanced civilization within 50 light-years detected the blast. On Zentara Prime, alarms sounded throughout the council chambers. Vexthul rushed to the monitoring station where dozens of his technicians were analyzing the energy burst. High Arbitrator, the humans deliberately crashed their ship into the quarantine barrier, reported Chief Analyst Mortek. They were not trying to escape. They were gathering information. Vexthul felt something that might have been fear if his species was capable of such emotions. Humans had just proven they were willing to sacrifice their own lives to gain knowledge about their captors. They had detected the barrier, analyzed its properties, and mounted a suicide mission to learn more about it. Sir, there is more, Mortek continued. Our deep space sensors are detecting unusual activity throughout human space. They are building something. Multiple construction projects have begun since the Pioneer incident. Vexthul realized that humanity had just declared war on the unknown. They did not know who had imprisoned them or why, but they were already working on ways to break free. The quarantine protocol that had contained hundreds of species was about to face its greatest challenge. The humans were not going to accept their cage. Council Enforcer Zaraketh commanded the largest diplomatic fleet ever assembled for first contact with a primitive species. Her ships approached the human solar system with confidence built on 12,000 years of successful negotiations. Every species eventually accepted their place in the galactic order. Humans would be no different. Her flagship carrier held translation computers loaded with protocols for dealing with aggressive newcomers. The Council had refined these procedures through contact with over 3,000 civilizations. Step 1 was always the same: demonstrate overwhelming technological superiority. Step 2 involved offering limited partnership in exchange for accepting galactic law. Step 3 meant assigning the new species their role in cosmic society. Zaraketh expected the humans to surrender immediately when they saw her fleet. Her intelligence reports described them as a young species with crude technology and violent tendencies. Like most primitives, they would quickly understand the benefits of Council protection. But as her ships entered human space, warning alarms began sounding throughout her command center. The humans were not cowering in fear. Instead, they were approaching with a fleet of their own. Dr. Kevin Park was working 18-hour days in the underground research facility beneath the Rocky Mountains. Around him, hundreds of Earth's best engineers were studying fragments recovered from the Pioneer's destruction. The pieces of alien technology made no sense according to human science. But Kevin had never let impossibility stop him from trying. "Sarah, hand me that crystalline fragment," Kevin called to his assistant, Dr. Sarah Williams. "I want to try connecting it to our power grid again." "Kevin, that made the last generator explode," Sarah reminded him. "Maybe we should run more tests first." "We do not have time for careful testing," Kevin replied as he carefully inserted the alien crystal into a modified human power coupling. "Admiral Hayes wants results, and those alien ships will be here soon." The crystal began glowing with soft blue light as human electricity flowed through its structure. Instead of exploding like previous attempts, it started converting the energy into something completely different. The power output readings climbed far beyond what should have been possible. "Sarah, are you seeing this?" Kevin asked excitedly. "This thing is not just storing energy. It is creating energy. It is breaking the conservation laws." Sarah checked her instruments twice before responding. "Kevin, this is impossible." "Energy cannot be created from nothing, but the readings are definitely showing power generation, not just storage." Meanwhile, other teams were making similar breakthroughs across the facility. Dr. Janet Moore had successfully integrated alien materials into human computer systems, creating hybrid processors that operated faster than light. Engineer Bill Davis had built propulsion systems that combined human engines with recovered alien components, producing thrust levels that violated known physics. The aliens had superior technology, but they had designed it to work only in specific ways. Humans were taking their components and using them in ways their creators had never imagined. Commander Helen Martinez stood on the bridge of the UNS Defender, looking at the massive alien fleet approaching Earth. Her ships were outnumbered 50-1, but they were no longer purely human vessels. Each ship had been hastily upgraded with hybrid technology that her engineers barely understood. "Commander, incoming transmission from the alien fleet," reported Communications Officer Pete Johnson. "They are attempting to establish contact using some kind of universal translation system." "Put them through, Pete," Helen ordered. She had been chosen to lead Earth's response because of her experience in difficult negotiations. But nothing had prepared her for speaking with an alien civilization. The main screen showed a creature that looked like a tall insect with 4 arms and multiple eyes. When it spoke, the translation system converted its words into English, but many concepts came through as simple beeps or static. "Greetings, primitive humans," the alien said. "I am Council Enforcer Zaraketh. You have violated galactic law by attempting to breach your assigned boundaries. However, the Council offers forgiveness in exchange for your immediate surrender and acceptance of our authority." Helen looked at the alien with confusion. "Forgiveness for what? We never agreed to any boundaries. And what gives you the right to keep us trapped in our own solar system?" Zaraketh's translator struggled with Helen's response. The concepts of rights and trapped did not translate properly into Council languages. In galactic society, authority came from technological superiority and accepted hierarchy. The idea that someone might question the system itself was incomprehensible. "Human, you do not understand," Zaraketh replied after a long pause. "The Council maintains order throughout the galaxy. All species must accept their designated role. Resistance leads only to destruction. And what role have you designated for humanity?" Helen asked. "You will be classified as a warrior species and assigned to frontier defense duties. Your violent nature makes you suitable for protecting Council territories from external threats. In exchange, you will receive limited access to galactic technology and trade networks." Helen almost laughed at the alien's arrogance. "Enforcer Zaraketh, I think you misunderstand the situation. We are not asking to join your council. We are informing you that your quarantine of our system ends now." During this conversation, something unexpected was happening aboard Helen's ship. Chief Engineer Dave Carter was monitoring the alien transmission when he noticed that their communication beam was carrying more than just words. Hidden in the signal were detailed technical specifications for Council technology. "Commander," Dave called from his station, "these aliens are accidentally giving us blueprints for their entire fleet. Their communication system is automatically sharing technical data with any ship that can receive it." Helen smiled as she realized the tactical advantage this provided. The aliens assumed that primitive humans could not understand advanced technology, so they had not bothered to encrypt their communications properly. The negotiation continued for several hours, with Zaraketh becoming increasingly frustrated by human responses that her translators could not properly process. Humans kept using concepts that had no equivalent in Council languages: innovation, improvisation, creative thinking, and individual rights. Finally, President Tony Clark joined the conversation from Earth. As the elected leader of humanity, he had the authority to speak for the entire species. "Enforcer Zaraketh," President Clark began, "humanity appreciates your offer of Council membership. However, we have a counter-proposal." Zaraketh was stunned. In 12,000 years of first contact procedures, no primitive species had ever made a counter-proposal. They either surrendered immediately or were destroyed for resistance. "We propose a mutual alliance between humanity and the Galactic Council," President Clark continued. "We will share our technological innovations in exchange for unrestricted access to galactic space and full independence in human affairs." "Impossible," Zaraketh responded immediately. "Primitive species do not negotiate with the Council. You have only 2 choices: accept your assigned role or face destruction." President Clark looked directly at the alien enforcer through the communication link. "Zaraketh, I think you need to reconsider who exactly is primitive here. We have been monitoring your fleet since you entered our system. We know how your ships work, what weapons you carry, and how to disable your technology." As if to prove his point, one of the human ships suddenly vanished from Zaraketh's sensors, then reappeared directly behind her flagship. The vessel had somehow used Council technology to teleport through space in a way that should have been impossible. "Your choice, Enforcer," President Clark said calmly. "You can recognize humanity as an equal partner, or you can explain to your superiors how a primitive species embarrassed the mighty Council fleet." Zaraketh realized that everything the Council thought they knew about humans was wrong. These creatures did not just break rules. They genuinely did not understand why the rules existed in the first place. Admiral Peter Lawson watched through his command ship's windows as Council vessels formed a blockade around Earth's solar system. The alien fleet had arrived 3 days after negotiations broke down, positioning themselves to prevent any human ship from leaving their home system. Zaraketh had made her intentions clear: surrender or be slowly starved into submission. But Peter had spent 30 years in Earth's Navy dealing with impossible situations. The Council expected humans to panic when faced with superior numbers and technology. Instead, Peter was already implementing plans that would have seemed insane to any rational military commander. "Sir, the civilian cargo ships have finished their modifications," reported Captain Jane Stone from the communications center. "All 300 vessels are now equipped with the hybrid weapon systems." Peter smiled as he reviewed the reports. When the Council had blockaded their system, they had assumed that only military vessels posed a threat. They had completely ignored Earth's massive civilian fleet of cargo haulers, passenger transports, and mining ships. Human engineers had spent the past month converting these peaceful vessels into the strangest warships in galactic history. Cargo containers now held missile launchers built from mining equipment. Passenger ships carried boarding pods made from emergency escape systems. Even garbage haulers had been fitted with weapons that used their waste disposal systems to launch projectiles. At incredible speeds, Dr. Susan Wright was working in her laboratory aboard the research station orbiting Mars when she made the discovery that would change everything. She had been studying the neural interface technology recovered from Council ships, trying to understand how alien pilots controlled their vessels. "Computer, run another scan of the alien neural interface," Susan commanded as she placed her hand on the strange crystalline device. The moment her skin touched the surface, her mind filled with information that should not have been possible for a human brain to process. She could suddenly see the flow of energy through every Council ship in the blockade. She understood their weapon systems, their shield frequencies, and most importantly, their safety limitations. The aliens had built their technology with strict boundaries that prevented dangerous or unpredictable operations. "This is incredible," Susan whispered as data flowed through her consciousness. "These ships could be 10 times more powerful than they are. But the aliens have programmed them to stay within safe parameters." Within hours, Susan was teaching other human pilots how to interface directly with captured Council technology. The aliens had designed their systems to work with any neural pattern that could establish a connection. They had never considered that another species might be willing to push the technology beyond its intended limits. Captain Roy Jackson volunteered to be the first human pilot to test Susan's discoveries. His ship was a captured Council scout vessel that human engineers had been modifying for weeks. The original alien crew had ejected in escape pods when humans boarded their ship, leaving behind all their advanced technology. "Roy, remember that these systems were not designed for human use," warned Chief Engineer Maria Santos as she made final adjustments to the neural interface. "If you push too hard, the ship might tear itself apart." "Maria, everything we have done so far was not designed for human use," Roy replied as he settled into the pilot seat. "That has never stopped us before." Navigator Bob Chen activated the recording systems to document whatever was about to happen. If Roy succeeded, they would need to train thousands of other pilots to use the same techniques. If he failed, at least they would know what not to try next. Roy placed his hands on the neural interface and immediately felt his consciousness expand throughout the ship. He could sense every component, every energy flow, every system that made the vessel function. But unlike the original alien pilots, Roy was not limited by programmed safety restrictions. He pushed the engines far beyond their rated capacity, channeling energy through pathways that the ship's designers had never intended to use. The vessel shot forward at speeds that violated several laws of physics, covering distances in seconds that should have taken hours. "Roy, your ship just disappeared from our sensors," Maria reported through the communication system. "Where are you?" I am everywhere, Roy replied as he experimented with the ship's dimensional capabilities. This thing can exist in multiple locations simultaneously. The aliens never figured out what their own technology could really do. 3,000 light-years away, War Marshal Krextar was preparing the most powerful military force in Council history. His orders were simple: destroy human resistance once and for all. The upstart species had embarrassed the Council long enough. Krextar commanded over 1,000 warships, each equipped with weapons capable of destroying entire planets. His fleet included battlecruisers that had conquered hundreds of worlds and veterans who had never experienced defeat. Against 300 modified human civilian ships, victory seemed certain. War Marshal, our scouts report unusual activity in human space, reported his intelligence officer. Their vessels are operating in ways that our computers cannot predict or model. Impossible, Krextar replied dismissively. Primitive species always follow predictable patterns. They lack the experience and wisdom to develop truly effective tactics. But when Krextar's fleet entered the human solar system, they encountered something that challenged every assumption about space warfare. Human ships that should have been easily destroyed were darting between Council vessels at impossible speeds. Weapons that should have been crude and ineffective were somehow penetrating advanced alien. Shield's engineer Phil Thompson had solved the faster than light travel problem while the Council fleet was still approaching Earth. Working from his laboratory in the asteroid belt, he had built a drive system that operated on completely different principles than traditional warp technology. The aliens used navigation beacons to create safe corridors through space, Phil explained to Admiral Lawson during a secure communication. But space does not actually need corridors. You can jump directly from any point to any other point if you are willing to calculate the risks. Phil, what kind of risks are we talking about? Admiral Lawson asked. Well, you might end up inside a star or scattered across 17 dimensions or arrive 300 years in the past, Phil replied cheerfully. But if the calculations are correct, you can appear anywhere instantly. Phil's prototype drive allowed human ships to ignore every rule of galactic transportation. They could appear behind enemy vessels without warning, strike targets deep inside Council territory, and vanish before retaliation was possible. The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic military history. Council forces found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to follow conventional tactics. Human ships would merge together to form larger vessels, then split apart to become swarms of smaller fighters. They used their own destroyed ships as weapons, turning debris into guided missiles that sought out alien targets. Captain Diana Moore commanded the most audacious mission of the war. While Council forces were focused on the main battle, she led a small strike force toward the Galactic Communication Hub that coordinated all Council activities across their empire. Diana, you realize this is completely insane, her co-pilot Steve Carter pointed out as they approached the heavily defended station. That hub is protected by the most advanced security systems in the galaxy. Steve, insane is exactly what we need right now, Diana replied as she activated Phil's experimental drive system. The Council expects rational behavior. Let's give them something completely irrational instead. Diana's ships appeared directly inside the communication hub's main control center, bypassing every external defense system. Her boarding teams, led by engineer Tom Bailey, quickly located the central processing cores that managed interstellar communications for thousands of worlds. Tom, can you shut this thing down without destroying it? Diana asked as alarms wailed throughout the station. Diana, I can do much better than that, Tom replied with a grin as he began connecting human computer systems to alien networks. I can reprogram it to work for us instead. Within minutes, the most important communication system in galactic history was under human control. Council fleets across the galaxy suddenly found themselves cut off from Central Command, unable to coordinate their activities or request reinforcements. War Marshal Krextar watched in horror as his perfectly organized military campaign collapsed into chaos. Without communication links to coordinate their movements, his ships began colliding with each other and firing on their own allies. The humans had not just won a battle. They had demonstrated that the entire foundation of Council power could be dismantled by anyone willing to think beyond established limitations. High Arbitrator Vexthal stood in the Council's Emergency Command Center, watching their entire civilization crumble. The central communication hub that humans had captured was more than just a communication system. It was the brain that controlled every automated process across 3,000 worlds. Without the hub's constant guidance, traffic control systems were failing on major trade routes. Planetary defense networks were shutting down randomly. Even basic services like waste management and power distribution were experiencing cascading failures as their control systems lost connection to the central network. High Arbitrator. We are receiving distress calls from 47 worlds, reported Emergency Coordinator Mel Thera. Their infrastructure systems are failing faster than local technicians can repair them. Vexthul felt something his species rarely experienced: panic. The Council had built their empire on automated efficiency and centralized control. For 12,000 years, they had perfected systems that required minimal local intervention. Now they were discovering the terrible cost of that efficiency. On the agricultural world of Kalthara, millions of beings were facing starvation as automated farming systems shut down. The planet's inhabitants had not needed to understand agriculture for thousands of years. Their machines had handled everything from planting to harvesting with perfect precision. Governor Zektual sent desperate messages to every nearby system, begging for assistance that could not come. The Council's standard response procedures required approval from the central authority. But the central authority was no longer functioning. Dr. Alex Turner received the distress signal while monitoring Council communication channels from his research station near Jupiter. The message described ecological collapse and mass starvation on a scale that humanity had never witnessed. Alex immediately contacted Admiral Lawson with a proposal that would have been unthinkable just months earlier. "Admiral, we need to help them," Alex said during their secure communication. "These are not soldiers or politicians. They are innocent people whose leaders made the mistake of fighting us." Admiral Lawson was initially skeptical. "Alex, these are the same aliens who tried to keep us trapped in our solar system. Why should we risk human lives to save them?" "Because this is who we are," Alex replied. "We help people when they need help. It does not matter if they are human or alien. It does not matter if they were our enemies yesterday." Within days, Alex was leading a convoy of human relief ships toward Kalthara. His team included agricultural specialists, engineers, and medical personnel who had volunteered for the dangerous mission into Council territory. They had no way of knowing if local forces would attack them or welcome their assistance. The Kalthara system's defense fleet moved to intercept the human ships as they approached the planet. Commander Yuldrex had orders to destroy any human vessel that entered their space, but his weapon systems were operating at only partial capacity due to the communication hub failure. "Unknown human vessels, you are entering restricted Council territory," Yuldrex transmitted. "Withdraw immediately or face destruction." Alex responded personally to the alien commander. "Commander, we are here to help your people. Our ships carry food, medical supplies, and equipment to repair your failing agricultural systems." Yuldrex was confused by the human response. In his experience, enemy forces did not offer humanitarian assistance. They either attacked or demanded surrender. The concept of helping former enemies made no sense according to Council military doctrine. "Human, this must be some kind of trick," Yuldrex replied. "What do you want in exchange for this supposed assistance?" "We want nothing," Alex answered. "Your people are suffering and we can help them. That is reason enough." As the human relief ships entered Kalthara's atmosphere, crowds of desperate aliens gathered at landing sites. They had been without food for 6 days, and their children were beginning to die from malnutrition. Many had never seen humans before, but hunger overcame their fear of the unknown species. Dr. Jennifer Walsh led the medical team that established emergency treatment centers in Kalthara's major cities. Working alongside alien physicians, she quickly discovered that most Council species had lost the ability to treat diseases that their automated systems had prevented for millennia. "Doctor, our people have not experienced infectious disease in over 3,000 years, explained Kalthara's chief medical officer, Rindal. "Our immune systems are not prepared for the bacterial infections that are spreading due to sanitation system failures." Jennifer and her team began teaching alien medical staff techniques that human doctors had used for centuries: basic sanitation, antibiotic treatments, and surgical procedures that required no advanced technology proved incredibly effective in treating problems that Council automation had simply prevented rather than cured. Meanwhile, agricultural specialist Carl Rodriguez was working with Calthera's farmers to restore food production using methods that did not require automated systems. The aliens watched in amazement as humans demonstrated crop rotation, natural fertilization, and irrigation techniques that worked without computer guidance. "These methods seem so primitive," observed lead agriculturalist Corthes, as Carl showed him how to test soil quality manually. "Why would anyone choose to work this way when machines can do everything perfectly?" "Because machines break," Carl replied simply. "When your automated systems failed, your people started starving. If you understood these basic techniques, you could have kept growing food while you fixed the machines." News of human relief efforts spread quickly through Council territory via the remaining communication networks. Other worlds experiencing infrastructure failures began sending secret requests for assistance, hiding their communications from Orthodox Council authorities who considered accepting human help to be treason. Ambassador Lisa Park established underground networks to coordinate these relief missions. Working from a hidden base in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, she managed communications with progressive aliens across dozens of worlds who were quietly implementing human solutions to their crisis. "Lisa, we are receiving requests faster than we can respond to them," reported Communications Officer Mark Peterson. 17 more worlds have requested assistance with their failing infrastructure systems. "Mark, we need to prioritize based on severity," Lisa replied as she reviewed the incoming messages. "Focus on worlds where people are dying first, then systems where complete collapse is imminent." But not all council members were willing to accept human assistance. War Marshal Krextar had regrouped his remaining forces on the fortress world of Vectara, where he was planning a final assault against human space. His communications with High Arbitrator Vexthal had become increasingly desperate. "High Arbitrator, we must strike back at the humans before our entire civilization collapses," Krextar argued during their secure communication. "Every day we delay gives them more time to corrupt our people with their chaotic methods." Vexthal was no longer certain that military action was the appropriate response. Reports from human relief missions showed aliens learning to solve problems independently rather than relying on automated systems. Perhaps there was value in the human approach that the Council had failed to recognize. "War Marshal, our intelligence reports indicate that humans are saving lives, not taking them," Vexthal replied. "Maybe we should consider that their methods might be beneficial rather than threatening." "Impossible," Krextar responded angrily. "Human chaos will destroy everything we have built. Order must be restored at any cost." But even as Krextar prepared his final offensive, a new threat was emerging from the galactic periphery. Deep space monitoring stations detected massive energy signatures approaching from the void between galaxies. The hegemony, an ancient enemy that the Council had held at bay for millennia, was taking advantage of the communication networks collapsed to probe galactic defenses. Automated border systems that had functioned perfectly for thousands of years were failing to coordinate their responses. Defensive fleets were unable to receive updated targeting information or tactical coordination. The very infrastructure that had made the Council invincible was now making them defenseless against external threats. Vexthal faced an impossible choice. He could continue fighting the humans and risk total annihilation by the hegemony, or he could swallow his pride and ask the chaotic species for help against an enemy that traditional Council tactics had never been able to defeat. The decision would determine whether galactic civilization survived or collapsed into darkness. Admiral Greg Foster stood on the bridge of the UNS Victory, watching the largest fleet in galactic history prepare for battle. Human ships flew alongside Council vessels in formations that would have been impossible just months earlier. The hegemony invasion force was approaching the galactic border, and traditional enemies had become desperate allies. War Marshal Krextar had finally swallowed his pride and requested human assistance when his scouts reported the true scope of the hegemony threat. The approaching fleet consisted of automated dreadnoughts that had been designed specifically to exploit Council predictability. They analyzed enemy tactics, adapted to countermeasures, and improved their strategies with each engagement. "Admiral, we are receiving tactical data from the Council command ship," reported Intelligence Officer Rachel Stone. "Their battle computers are sharing everything they know about hegemony combat patterns, Greg studied the information with growing concern. The hegemony had fought the Council dozens of times over the past 1,000 years. Each battle had ended the same way. Council forces would establish defensive positions using standard formations, and hegemony machines would systematically destroy them using precisely calculated attacks. Rachel, this data shows that the Council has never won a single engagement against the hegemony, Greg observed. They have only managed to hold the border through overwhelming numbers and defensive positions. Yes, sir. And now their communication breakdown has eliminated their numerical advantage. Rachel replied. Council fleets cannot coordinate their movements or concentrate their forces effectively. Captain Jeff Wright commanded the UNS Hybrid, the first truly integrated human-alien warship ever constructed. His crew included both human and Council personnel working together to operate systems that neither species could manage alone. The ship itself was a masterpiece of combined engineering that followed no known design principles. Captain, all hybrid systems are online, reported Chief Engineer Nancy Phillips. Human creativity modules are interfacing successfully with Council computational networks. Jeff had volunteered to command the experimental vessel despite warnings that the hybrid technology was completely untested. Human intuition and alien logic were supposed to be incompatible, but early tests suggested that combining them created capabilities that exceeded either approach alone. Dr. Kate Sullivan had made the breakthrough that allowed consciousness technology integration to work across species barriers, her research station orbiting. Neptune had become the center for development of hybrid systems that merged human creativity with alien computational power. The key was understanding that consciousness is not limited by biology, Kate explained to Admiral Foster during their final strategy meeting. Human creativity can interface with any system designed to accept conscious input, regardless of the species that created it. Kate's technology allowed human pilots to merge their thinking with Council battle computers, creating hybrid minds that could process information faster than any purely alien system while maintaining the unpredictability that made human tactics so effective. The first hegemony. Ships entered the galaxy 3 days later, appearing at the border like dark storms against the stars. Each vessel was perfectly designed for destruction, with weapon systems that could adapt to any defensive strategy and armor that learned from each attack. Council Admiral Tekvarel commanded the left flank of the combined fleet using traditional defensive formations that had protected the galaxy for millennia. His ships arranged themselves in precise geometric patterns with overlapping fields of fire and coordinated shield harmonics. The hegemony response was swift and devastating. Their ships analyzed the Council formation for exactly 17 seconds, then began a systematic destruction sequence that targeted the precise weaknesses in the defensive arrangement. Within minutes, half of Tekvarel's fleet had been reduced to drifting wreckage. Admiral Foster, the Council formations are being destroyed faster than they can be replaced, reported Communications Officer Frank Davis. Traditional tactics are completely ineffective. Against hegemony adaptive systems, Greg activated the fleet-wide communication system that connected human and alien ships across the entire battle zone. All vessels, this is Admiral Foster, abandon standard formations and implement Chaos Protocol 7. Chaos Protocol 7 was a human tactical doctrine that had never been tested on such a massive scale. Instead of maintaining organized formations, ships would operate as independent units, making unpredictable movements and attacking targets based on opportunity rather than predetermined strategy. Captain Jeff Wright's hybrid ship was the first to engage hegemony forces using the new approach. His combined human-alien crew made decisions too quickly for the enemy computers to analyze and predict. The UNS Hybrid darted between hegemony vessels like a dancer, striking vital systems and vanishing before return fire could be calculated. Jeff, your ship just performed a maneuver that violates 6 laws of physics, observed Dr. Kate Sullivan from her monitoring station. The hybrid consciousness is creating solutions that neither human nor alien minds could develop independently. But the real breakthrough came when engineer Tom Rodriguez discovered that hegemony ships were designed to fight rational opponents. Their artificial intelligence systems could predict and counter any logical strategy, but they had no programming for dealing with genuinely irrational behavior. Admiral, I have an idea that is either brilliant or completely insane, Tom reported from his position aboard the experimental ship UNS Chaos. What if we try talking to them? Talking to them? Greg replied with confusion. Tom, these are automated war machines. They were built to destroy, not communicate. That is exactly why it might work, Tom explained excitedly. Their programming assumes that enemies will fight back with weapons and tactics. But what if we approach them with logic and conversation instead? Tom's proposal was so unexpected that Admiral Foster decided to authorize the attempt. The UNS Chaos approached the largest hegemony dreadnought and opened a communication channel instead of attacking. Hegemony vessel. This is Captain Tom Rodriguez of the human ship Chaos, Tom transmitted. We would like to discuss the logical basis for this conflict. The hegemony ship stopped firing immediately. Its artificial intelligence had no protocol for responding to enemy requests for philosophical discussion during active combat. For the first time in its operational history, the machine was genuinely confused. Unknown vessel, state your tactical objective, the hegemony ship finally responded. Our objective is to understand why you consider galactic civilization to be a threat worth destroying, Tom replied calmly. From our analysis, the Council species pose no danger to your continued existence. What followed was the strangest military engagement in galactic history. Human ships began engaging hegemony forces in philosophical debates while continuing to fight, using logical arguments as weapons more effective than any physical attack. The hegemony machines had been programmed to destroy opposition through superior force and tactics. They had no defense against opponents who questioned the fundamental assumptions underlying their mission. One by one, enemy ships began to withdraw from combat as their artificial intelligences struggled to process concepts they had never been designed to handle. The final hegemony command ship surrendered, after Captain Lisa Morgan convinced its central computer that destroying galactic civilization would actually harm the hegemony's long-term interests. The machine intelligence agreed to a ceasefire while it reconsidered its entire strategic programming. In the aftermath of the battle, High Arbitrator Vexthal faced a decision that would reshape galactic civilization. The old system of rigid hierarchy and centralized control had failed completely. Human methods had succeeded where council traditions had failed for thousands of years. Arbitrator Vexthal, the Great Reformation proposals have been approved by representatives from over 2,000 worlds, reported Council Secretary Morallen. They are requesting immediate implementation of human-style innovation zones and collaborative research programs. Vexthal looked at the proposals with something approaching wonder. The galaxy would be divided into experimental regions where species could develop new technologies without restriction. Traditional council territories would be maintained for those who preferred stability, but younger civilizations would have access to areas where innovation was encouraged rather than controlled. Captain Sean Mitchell commanded the first joint exploration mission into the galactic regions that had been forbidden under the old council laws. His crew included humans, council members, and even former hegemony machines that had chosen to join the new cooperative civilization. Captain, we are detecting massive energy signatures in the void beyond the galactic rim, reported Science Officer Angela Cooper. The readings suggest artificial structures larger than entire star systems. Sean smiled as he realized that humanity's greatest adventure was just beginning. The galaxy itself was merely the starting point for exploration that would eventually reach beyond any limitations that had previously been considered. Absolute President Nancy Adams addressed the reformed Galactic Assembly from Earth, speaking to representatives of thousands of species who had gathered to plan their shared future. The rigid hierarchy